Hello and welcome along to Not Another Sports Pod with myself, David, and Mr. Oliver Wilson. And this is episode number 9 of Not Another Sports Pods. And I'm in Argentina at the moment, Buenos Aires, Argentina, covering the Copa Libertadores. Mr. Oliver Wilson is back at HQ in England, covering, well, just about any sport that they'll let you have a microphone behind, Ollie. How are you, mate?
I'm good, man. I went from having a very quiet looking August to like stuff hits the fan and you're suddenly bopping around things, or you've got 2 games in one day and all this kind of stuff. And it's fun, man. The whole thing keeps you on your toes in this job. And there's just one thing I wish is that like messages for work would come out. I'm very lucky I get to work in this job. I need to preface it with all of this stuff. But I wish messages for work would come out more than like 4 days in advance at times. Because you go from being like, oh, I've got a Sunday free to have some time with the family or the girlfriend or whatever. And then it comes, oh, I've got 2 games on Sunday and then 1 on Tuesday and 1 on Wednesday. So I literally have just a Monday free to do prep. And then the other days I'm filling all the other stuff in between as well. It's killer.
Isn't that just how the world works, though, Ollie? Like, politicians think 3 days in advance. People save for a 1 week in advance. Like, that's just how the world works.
Mate, I've booked a holiday next May. So yeah. I'm thinking steps ahead at this point. I'm a bit disappointed as well. You've not used your official moniker of David the Wizard Windsor, which I hear is doing the rounds on the world broadcast feeds these days.
I accidentally made the mistake of telling my co-commentator that I once auditioned to be Harry Potter, and so then I was referred to on air as David the Wizard Windsor. On air being the thing, but JC, I enjoyed it, so don't worry about it.
I need to hunt down that clip, because that just there is a 30-second reel that I want to then throw in the actual audio of that broadcast, mate. I definitely want it. How is the Copa Libertadores and the Copa Sudamericana?
It's so great being back. You know, so the flight from England to Argentina is obviously very long and laborious. You take the flight, it's 24 hours door to door. I got here to the Airbnb that I usually stay at, Ollie, and the Airbnb host who rents this apartment to me, the first thing he said to me, do you know what it was, mate?
You're back?
In his broken English. He's back! Gashardo's back! Because he's a River fan. And when you've been traveling, I like to think I'm a chatty person, but when you've been traveling for 24 hours, sometimes you just want to dump your bag in the Airbnb, have a shower and go to bed. And I was just treated with, he's back, El Muñeco, which is like the little doll, because Gashardo's quite a kind of short but well proportioned, pretty little man. So yeah, that's just what I got. He's back because Marcelo Gashardo's back in the river. We won't bore our Not Another Sports Pod fans with the macro of that.
Yeah, but are we hypocrites to some extent? Because we said with like Gashardo, I think we touched on it last time a couple of weeks ago, like you never go back, he shouldn't go back. But we keep going back to Argentina as well. So we almost understand the lure of it. Like we've said on a couple of occasions, like, oh, I might not be there. If it's not there, we might not go back, kind of thing. And yet, you're out there again. I'm definitely not completely out of the woods of, well, let's see what happens when it comes around next year and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, we are the hypocrites.
Always go back. I've changed my mind. Always go back is the new never go back. Yeah. Also, the other day, Ollie, I said to someone, oh, can you think of an example of a manager who was utterly, madly successful at a football club, left, returned, and was successful again? And someone, without missing a beat, said Ancelotti. And I was like, yeah. So it is, there are examples of it, but they're obviously outweighted by the coaches, the players, the people that went back, and it wasn't a successful second time around. But there are, like Ancelotti, went back to Real Madrid, was massively doubled down on massive success.
Isn't King Carlo the exception that proves the rule, potentially?
Probably.
And Carlo Ancelotti is one in his own.
But the GOAT Gashardo is just behind.
The GOAT. You say that again on this podcast, we turn off the Zoom call, I tell you. GOAT.
Oh, I thought you were all about the American sports.
GOAT is the term that is used too often by too many people to describe too many athletes' sporting moments, in the same way worldie is. It's a worldie from 12 yards out in the top corner. No, it's just a nice goal in the top corner, guys. It's not a worldie. And a player doing something once and having an okay career doesn't make them a potential GOAT. That's my gripe out, done with. There'll be a few more.
Well, you ain't going viral with that kind of chat, mate. Don't you know it's all about, this is the 3 reasons why this player is the GOAT. That's what it is. Also, Ollie Wilson once coined a phrase that I have never heard before or since, and I'm disappointed it's fallen out of the footballing lexicon. And that is a creamy strike. I don't know whether it's a little bit too sensual, or I don't know why it never got reused. Ollie, explain to the audience what it means.
I've used it on a few occasions. I just don't want to overuse it, because if it becomes something that you rely on and overuse, then you never change your vocabulary in it. Because
what is it?
A creamy strike is something that's easy on the eye. It flies through the air. There's no kind of potential deflection. There's no odd spin on the ball or anything like that. The whole build-up, the finish, and everything is just like one smooth, creamy motion to
Dollop
describe
of cream.
Yeah, it's
okay.
it's almost like the pouring of cream. It's just this thick, smooth, creamy motion. And even when it goes into the bowl in slow motion, you get that splosh around it, which isn't splashing everywhere. It's just kind of glooping into one place. That's what a creamy goal is. It's smooth, it's easy on the eye, and more importantly, it tastes as good as it looks.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna try and use it this week then. Most of all, let's start with Olympics fallout. You covered a lot of the Olympics. There's a lot to unpack from it all.
Yeah,
tell me what your final thoughts about the Olympics are.
Yusuf Dicek needs to go into the Hall of Fame. If you're talking about GOATs, we are going to say that the Turkish shooter, Yusuf Dicek, is the GOAT of creating brand new celebrations, because his pose, that iconic pose of him with no special spectacles on like a number of the pistol shooters had, no special gear at all, no wrist lock or glove or anything, just arm by the side, other arm up, staring down the target and firing and picking up a silver medal for Turkey. And the story behind it about how he first picked up a firearm because he was enraged with an argument he was having with his now ex-wife, and he realised he was good at shooting, and he's taken that in just a few years into the Olympics and come away with a medal. And now, after he's found his medal, every other athlete is doing his pose around the Olympic Games in celebration. I just think is one of those wonderful Olympic stories of the everyman becoming every man's man. I think it's great. I think it's superb that he got his kind of flowers throughout the whole Olympic Games for almost a month.
It also taps in, Ollie, to what the definition of cool is. And I remember reading what someone once, or maybe it's in a film, that the definition of cool is acting like something's not a big deal, right? That was the same in school. It's the same with James Bond. It's the same why smoking looks cool. It's like you don't care. Like, on some level, you're just so outcome independent. Like, whatever happens, happens. This is how I'm doing it. I'm my own person. Bang, bang. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's that I don't give a fuck thing that will stand the test of time as just being, if you could pull it off, and it's a really tricky one to pull off, right? Because no one likes to try hard. Like, no one likes someone selling you Huel or, what, you know,
nothing
no
wrong
one
with
likes
Huel.
that kind
Nothing
of
wrong with Huel. Dave wins it. Nothing wrong with that.
It's got 4,002,000 of your essential ingredients. No, but like not caring is cool, and that's where that fits in, and it's just iconic, and it's brilliant, and it's swagger, and it's just like you can't replicate that, you can't plan that. It's just how you look at that moment, and it was just fucking cool.
It's just a 40-year-old man with more swagger than anybody else at the Olympics. It was superb. Like, you talk about Noah Lyles jumping around, that's not cool.
Agree.
Turkish firearm master nonchalantly picking up a silver. That is cool.
Lars running around, Ollie, was cool when he won gold, but then he did it for the 200 and he didn't win gold. And after he said he had COVID, and then it's like, well, why were you jumping around? And so that's the real fine line for me, where like if you're gonna do something so extroverted, you simply have to be the best. Whereas if you're gonna have that laissez-faire vibe, you can get away with more. It was a great moment.
Yeah, sorry, not even 40, he's 51, isn't he, with no specialist equipment. He said, I think my shooting pose represented the Olympic spirit very well. The fair play, simplicity, clarity, and naturalness, which is a wonderful... Even he's nonchalant about it in his own way. He's not like the Hock Tour girl who's hocking herself around everywhere and fair play to her.
I'm happy to defend her.
No. I think she's doing it in a way that isn't irritating, but she's not just like, she is going, right, this is a moment, I can have this moment, let's do this. And even now, it just feels so calm. Yusuf seems so like, yeah, I did a thing. I got a thing. It's very cool. Right, let's be done with it. And everybody else is like, nah, we're sticking around with you. I like it. The other thing, though, is that was the good about the Olympics, right? And you can talk about Noah Lyles, and the men's 100-meter final was absolutely incredible, as we touched on a few weeks ago, and everything like that. But there was so much negativity and rubbish around the Olympics, like the incident in the shooting for Amber Rutter, the British athlete, who quite clearly struck the clay pigeon on replays. You can see it, and it cost her a gold medal. She ended up taking the silver medal instead. And she said that she's not going to ask for any sort of kind of change to the result or anything like that. She just wanted an apology. And the fact that like the IOC and the shooting committee at the IOC or anything like that hasn't come out and said, look, we messed up big time and made a bigger deal about this, is just pretty ugly in a modern day system where they're talking about the Olympics need to be the pinnacle of these sports. Well, if you're at the pinnacle of these sports, you have to make sure that your decisions are perfectly correct in these key sorts of moments. And if you've got replays there and television cameras can see it and officials don't change their mind even when there are television cameras showing the audience, and it's the problem we had with football. If a football audience can view a game on TV and see what's wrong and a referee isn't able to make that clarification on the pitch, that's when you've got a problem. And that's why we've ended up, whether you like it or hate it, with VAR. Well, shooting's even simpler. Did you hit it? Did you not hit it? Right, she hit it. We need to be able to go back and make sure that these are the correct results. And credit to Amber, she's handled it very well with like dignity and with aplomb, but it's poor. Same with the Jordan Childs thing, the US gymnast who was forced to give back her bronze medal because she appealed a result, and then it turned out the appeal came 60 seconds too late. And it's like, well, that's long enough that the IOC should have known that that appeal shouldn't have stood. So we shouldn't have had the palaver of an athlete being given their dream to pick up a medal and then having to give it back again. Again, that's just, it's ugly and it's unnecessary, and it never really should happen if the Olympics wants to be treated like the Olympics wants to be treated, as the greatest sporting competition of all time.
Let me ask you a question, Ollie. Let's say you're head of the IOC for the next 6, 8, 10 Olympics. What do you do to keep the Olympics relevant, to keep it exciting, to keep it as this incredible 2-week spectacle? And I'm asking specifically, I put you on the spot here, I should have said this as a WhatsApp question before, because I'm sort of just thinking as I talk. But specifically, do you double down on the cool, the new, the different, the skateboarding, the let's just chuck pillow fighting gymnastics in there and see what happens and hope that it goes viral on TikTok? Or do you try and pull it back and, you know, just make it a bit more authentically Olympics, for want of a better non-adjective? I mean, what do you think? I mean, obviously there's a massive team and a massive body of people, you'd hope, doing plenty of like market research every 3 years, but you know, in the build up to the Olympics, and they've got plans and they think this and this, and let's try this and let's do this on social media and you know, TV rights, etc. But what do you think the core is? What do you think the key is to keeping the Olympics relevant?
I think you can do both, can't you? I mean, the great thing about the Olympics is, like, you know, breakdancing isn't going to be in the Olympics next time out. We had it for the first time in Paris. It's not going to be there in Los Angeles in 4 years' time. But if a nation decides that they want to try and bring it back, there is that ability to bring it back in time for the Olympics. Weirdly, we still don't have boxing confirmed at the Olympics for 2028 just yet. So we might not have boxing feature at the Olympics, which seems criminal considering how many great Olympians have then turned and become great professionals, particularly in the heavyweight, super heavyweight categories at the Olympics. But I think it does allow, the system that you set up does allow for changes to take place and for nations to kind of flex their own style in the events that they do put in. We're going to have flag football in the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028, for instance, which is a very American thing, but they're hosting the games. They've earned the right to petition for that to be in the Olympics. So I think you can dabble in both. I think your core sports, your classic events, and the ones that people get sucked into without realizing, like the shooting, like maybe some table tennis or some volleyball. Suddenly people every 4 years go, God, indoor volleyball's a great sport to watch, isn't it? Like it's crazy fast and athletic, and you know, it draws people in. And the Olympics does that every single year. The number of people I've spoken to said, like, yeah, I just flick something on and it would be on, and 5 minutes later I'm calling out like an armchair pundit. So I don't think the Olympics needs to do much to get things right. What it does need to do is it needs to handle these sorts of negative situations better to make sure they don't come up in the future. The technicalities that they're stepping around and getting incorrect in terms of an appeal that's lodged too late, in terms of getting decisions wrong when they're clear as day, Those are the things that need to... I mean, even Noah Lyles, you look at... it was the perfect contrast of these Olympics in terms of you had the 100-meter final, superb race, comes out bouncing all over the place. And then you have his 200-meter race where it turns out he's got COVID. Well, what on earth is he doing even racing with COVID, being allowed near the athletes and stuff? Like, whatever you think about COVID, whether it's severity or not, but we did shut a world down for a long period of time to handle COVID. Fair enough. Everybody can have their own opinion. But we did shut the world down for a second, and there are people that are more at risk than others. And if we're saying Noah Lyles is okay to run and sprint with COVID and be around other people, you wouldn't have Noah Lyles necessarily wanting to do that if he was struggling with even a flu or something. So I just find there were so many moments that cropped up just to tarnish even this Australian breakdancing woman and the kind of hype around her and the negativity that was shown towards her. And whether you're into breakdancing or not, I don't even know if she did anything incorrect or correctly. She didn't have what was called the power moves, but she also became a great talking point that actually sucked people into the Olympics even more. It may have drawn their attention to it more. But then there are people
a genius of it.
But there are also people wiping her stuff off the internet because of negative comments around it, and people who've used her negatively in memes is being now taken off the internet, which is like, well, that's not right either, is it? I mean, she did her thing, fair enough. She's got to stand by what she did, and now the world gets to view it how they're allowed to view it. I don't agree with obviously being horrible for the sake of being horrible, but funny things like, I don't know, the Dune sand walking from the movie Dune, and then they cut it with her doing that because, you know, it's so crazy all over the place. Yeah, it's just a silly, funny thing, and that gets scrubbed off the internet, and it's like, really? This is the world's game, so don't the people of the world own the Olympics as much as the IOC do?
She is ahead of her time, Ollie. A genius. In my opinion, that is just a work of art and a work of genius. And she was probably about 7 Olympic Games ahead of her time. There we go. You know,
Rogun.
It was just
2028.
It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in sport. Yeah, the second was Sorry, go for
it. But she did. There are rumours that it has been her and her husband have fixed things too. And this is just some threads I've seen.
Yeah, the whole fucking thing's a hustle. Like, that's life. Like, I don't know. When I saw that story, I was like, what do you think she's doing? She's trying to leverage the situation to gain the most for herself and possibly her country. Like, welcome to being alive, bro. Like, what do you think all these people are doing? Like, you know. One thing.
I'm in the hustle house. I'm in the hustle house. I got to admire it. You know, you got to.
It was absolutely hustle central. It's fantastic. One final thing. One thing that did tickle me, Ollie, in the aftermath of the Olympics was the poll that went round to Brits about if you train for the next 3 years, what percentage of you could compete in the Olympic Games. And by then, you know, obviously everyone massively overestimates their ability. And it was something like, you know, more than 50% of people thought with the right training over 3 years, they could compete in the Olympics, which is not only deeply insulting to Olympians, but you see the Aussie breakdancer and you think, well, like, give me 3 years and I reckon I can come up with a better routine than that.
Yeah, I might not come away with a medal, but I'll compete. By the way, who wants a gold medal that's got 1% gold in it these days? That's cheap, Olympics. What are you doing? And
Mate.
just finally, for the Olympics, we touched on the cult of celebrity just creeping in even more and more over the last few years into sport and into the Olympics in general, with Dr. Dre now saying that he wants to compete in archery for 2028. I think we're going to see the LA Olympics is going to be the celebrity Olympics. You're going to have NFL players playing in the flag football. You're going to have, obviously, as we always have, NBA players playing in the basketball. And if you're going to have people like Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg wanting to get involved in other events as well. And look, if they qualify for it and train for it, I guess it's fair play, but I'm also a bit like, I don't care about the backstory of Dr. Dre doing archery. I'd care more about the backstory of like some unknown who comes through and has gone through strife or whatever, and archery is the thing they've turned to and it's got them through some moments, and then they take it to the Olympics and go and compete for their country. That's a beautiful thing. Dr. Dre watching the Olympics, going up on a hill, firing one arrow, hitting the target from about 20 yards, and then going, yep, that's me. I'm doing this. 2028, Los Angeles. I'm going to represent. Like, I'm good, Dre. Like, you already represented for South Central with the rap. You did a phenomenal job with NWA and changing the rap music game how you did. You're done.
Mate, when Snoop Dogg wins the equestrian gold, we're gonna have to be eating some humble pie. Wait, Ollie, sorry, are you saying that the USA try and make everything about themselves and try and dictate the social and cultural narratives of the world? Surely not, Ollie
No,
Wilson.
mate,
This is
not
breaking news.
not a chance, man. No, they're very humble people, humble and unintrusive for sure. I would say. No, it's
All
just
right.
weird, just weird.
Yeah, but I'm already looking forward to it. Let's talk Premier League, Ollie. First weekend of the Premier League season. I just want to talk about Raheem Sterling very, very briefly, and in the wider context of Chelsea buying every footballer seemingly that's available. So, Raheem Sterling was left out of the squad for their opening weekend fixture against Manchester City, and Raheem Sterling's representatives, I don't know how many people work for every player these days, but his representatives put out a statement just saying how disappointed they were with the situation of being left out of the squad. Now, Raheem Sterling got kind of criticised for this, destroyed, said it was inappropriate, petty, pathetic, ridiculous, embarrassing. All the rest of this was on Monday Night Football. Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher. Just allow me to make the case for Raheem Sterling here. Ollie, if you work for a company, which Raheem Sterling does, and all of a sudden, and you're the product manager for some random company, and all of a sudden, that company bring in 4 additional product managers, you're going to think, what's going on here? There's not additional work, as in there's not additional games, but they brought in about 4 people to do your role. And all of a sudden, you turn up on a Monday, Ollie, and someone says, oh, no, actually, you're not needed for the rest of this week. What on earth are you supposed to think? You've got a contract with that company where you do work for that company. And all of a sudden, the company's brought in loads of additional people to do your exact same role. Raheem Sterling was well within his rights to word a very polite but pushy letter just asking his employers, excuse me, what on earth is going on? Like, I don't think that's out. He didn't swear. He didn't get angry. He didn't make it really about himself. Although, obviously, it was about himself. But he's speaking clearly for half the squad when he writes that letter because half the squad are thinking the exact same thing. But I just thought it was a very reasonable thing to do. It was very open. It's very reasonable. What do people want him to do? Just, like, shut up and not get to do his work or get angry? He didn't do either of those things. It was a very fair letter, I thought. And I thought it was harsh that people were criticising him.
Well, that's the thing that a lot of fans do want. Athletes to be seen and not heard, shut up, be quiet, stop complaining about anything and go and do your job. The difference is, it's like Raheem Sterling is probably in a situation now where we're getting close to the end of the transfer window where it's probably actually quite useful for him to know how much game time he's going to be getting because he's still got aspirations of playing for England, being back involved in the national team setup. He wants to be playing regular first team football like so many do. And with Chelsea buying 600 players this summer, and we've all seen the memes and everything ridiculing for them for it, there is a strong chance that Raheem Sterling is going to be very, very limited with game time if this is the way that the new owners want to go. And if that's the case, he wants to know a bit of clarity just so he can say, right, well, I would quite like to try and find a move away. I'd like to find some options elsewhere if this is what you're doing. Much like you would in any company. Crikey, we're doing this in football broadcasting a lot of the time. You know, you work on a product for a bit and then a load of other new broadcasters come on and you go up to the person that's in charge of it and you kind of say, look, now am I going to be losing out on games? I'm just wondering why when there's 6 of us that have been doing this, you brought another 5 more just in case. Are they like it to backup or reserve or whatever? And everybody who's working for themselves, which at the end of the day, footballers are free sole traders, aren't they? They're making their money for themselves. I know they're employed contractually by the football clubs, but it's almost like a freelance contract. There you go, 3 years, and then we'll maybe think about renegotiating a new deal or something. So they are looking out for themselves at this point. And I don't really see the problem with Raheem Sterling questioning what's happening because everybody else has questioned it throughout the season. The difference is maybe going so public with it. Is it something that could have been kept behind closed doors? Yeah, it probably could. But at the end of the day, how do we know that Raheem Sterling hasn't been asking these questions for weeks on end as the transfer
100%.
Market's been coming in?
100%.
2 seconds,
what, Ollie,
2 seconds of reflection and talking to Raheem Sterling would clarify it.
Totally. And what, everyone's allowed to ask the question apart from Raheem Sterling? Doesn't seem right, does it? Like, everyone's allowed to question Chelsea's transfer policy, but not the actual individuals that are impacted by it? Doesn't seem right at all. I thought Carragher and Neville were way off on Monday Night Football talking about that.
Well,
way off.
I also think it actually is kind of great in that Raheem Sterling is showing that he doesn't want to be one of those players that sits and just takes the money, and he wants to actually play football. You know, we've had countless examples of this. The one I always think of is Scott Sinclair, who was at this wonderful point in his career at Swansea. Manchester City come knocking, and everyone goes, I'm not sure if Scott's actually going to be playing too much football. And Scott Sinclair barely played any freaking football, much like Calvin Phillips has done as well, going to Manchester City. Sat there on the bench, coining it in, taking the money, but Sinclair never really kicked up a fuss, never really looked for a new deal anywhere, to our knowledge at least anyway, and just sat and took the paycheck week in, week out, 110 grand a week. Perfect. Right, well, this is just setting my family up for life, and I don't have to do anything. This kind of works out for everybody, really. Whereas at least Raheem Sterling is kicking up a fuss because he wants to kick a football and he wants to play. We've spoken in the past about kind of a bit of forward planning. We've spoken about it on this show, right? I was lucky enough to be sat working with a couple of different current footballers in the last few weeks, and one of them's looking for a club, and he was saying the exact same thing of like, you knew you wanted me at some point and were going to need me in this position. Why am I not on your radar much earlier this summer? Because it's an easier position to fill rather than having 8 clubs coming at him now with 2 weeks to go in the transfer window when he's looking for a job and maybe he doesn't want to pack up his kids and his family at the last minute or anything like that. There's so many outside factors that actually need to be taken in, because it isn't just the player. Players will go where they need to go. But do you, as a mid to late 20s, early 30s sort of man, do you want to be, say, up and away from your family and young kids when you've got them based in London, but suddenly Newcastle come in and give you a job, and it's like, great, so I'm going to live in
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so I'm going to live in a
MLS,
hotel and sit there on the other side of the planet, or the other side of the country is even bad enough, barely see my family. Like, that's not a lifestyle that a lot of people necessarily want. I'm not saying it's a hard life, because they get so much, they're financially reimbursed very well at Raheem Sterling's level, but there are mental aspects that need to be taken into account.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're supposed to be, this is supposed to be like a mental health era where we care about like men's mental health and stuff like that, and yet we're perfectly prepared to sort of throw Raheem Sterling under the bus. Yeah, so there we go, Raheem. Put Wilson and Windsor on the payroll, because that's as good as defence as you'll get from anywhere in the, I'm not going to say mainstream media because we're not quite there yet, but...
Chelsea could have done with that sort of defence against City, to be honest. They might have kept things a bit more tighter at the back. I mean, it's embarrassing. Cucurella with his... No, let's just talk about Cucurella for a second, with his shouting out about Erling Haaland and then getting done. I'm sorry, but there is chickens coming to home to roost very quickly in that one. And I always think it's stupid for players at whatever level, unless you are like Michael Jordan-esque, any player that goes out and starts taking very firm shots at another individual that they're going to be going up against, you are reaping the rewards that come your way. And Cucurella got that this week, and it's so naive and so foolish. I know it was like a drunk party thing and all that kind of stuff, but like that, there's a phrase in US sports that's like bulletin board worthy, where, okay, I'm going to take that clipping. Erling Haaland, I'm waking up every single day before that first weekend of the season, and I'm watching that speech from Cucurella, because that is coming home.
Ollie, I could not disagree with you more.
Oh, come on.
First of all, Cucurella is an absolute sleeper, catchy, fantastic hit. The fact that he's come up with that by himself is just genius. The lyrics are solid. They stand alone. It's a really great tune. His delivery was out there, not for everyone, very camp, but it was beautifully camp. Like, it worked. It was magical in many ways. The greatest football song since World in Motion, in my opinion. And I think, Ollie, if you can't sing a silly song when you've won the European Championship, when can you? He wasn't saying Erling Haaland's a disgraceful person, I hate him. He was saying, like, I eat paella and I have a beer, and like, oh, once I I tackled Erling Haaland. Like, it was so harmless. And this whole, like, haha, Erling Haaland scored against you. It's like, yeah, Erling Haaland scores against everyone all the time. The guy's an absolute monster, of course. I don't think Cucurella was saying, like, Erling Haaland's never going to get past me again. It was just a fucking funny song. Nah. So yeah, that's where we disagree. Mr. Wilson's looking at me like I've really gone off the rails here.
Target straight on the back right there. Look, I'm all down for having fun. Enjoy the victories, all that. But in the words of Will Smith, keep people's names out your mouth. All right? You just don't need to bring Haaland into it or anything like that. Yeah. And Cucurella got slapped. He got slapped on that opening day of the season by Haaland. And unlike Chris Rock, it's what he deserved.
Slapped is like an adjective now that kids say for cool.
Yeah, that slaps. Yeah, I'm down with the kids. Yeah. You see my cat.
I don't know, you're more much more in tune with the American kids street lingo.
Yeah.
All right,
it's pretty fire.
Mikel Arteta. I still miss calling things pants. I think that was. I think Britain peaked when we came up with that adjective. Early noughties, we were calling bad things pants.
That's pants.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. And Americans couldn't latch onto that because they're talking about a different item of clothing if they say pants. Whereas the UK, it's like, it's just those pants. So harmless,
It's
so
innocent.
soft,
So
British.
innocent, yeah.
So good, man.
Can't get angry at a small child
Mikel,
saying that's pants. Not a chance.
it's just great, man. Yeah, so Mikel Arteta. Right. I don't know if you saw that. I think you did see this, Ollie. I'm sure many people saw it, many people didn't. Mikel Arteta basically during pre-season, while the players were having dinner or mingling around, he hired a pickpocket to go around them all and like pickpocket them to show them, to teach them a lesson about how easily things can go wrong, or some kind of mad
Always
lesson in there,
be
maybe
observant.
or not, or it's
Yeah.
just fucking weird. I don't know. But also, I'd never watched the Amazon Prime documentary about Arsenal. I don't know whether you did, mate. There's so many documentaries now, you can't watch them all. But I saw, have you seen the light bulb clip? Basically, Arteta has the whole squad around him, and he's standing in the middle of them with a light bulb, and he says, like, Edison invented the light bulb, but the light bulb must be connected. Like, we must be connected for anything to work. So those are two examples. I'm sure there's like a million more. I didn't watch the Amazon documentary because of the fucking documentary about every football club in the world now. There's a great quote. The difference between insanity and genius is measured only by success. If Arsenal win the league by goal difference, Ollie, people will be like, I mean, Arteta's a genius with those marginal gains in the pickpocket story. But otherwise, he looks like David Brent. So what is he? Genius, or is that insane, or is it genius?
He's just spent too much time with the American arm of the Manchester City Corporation, because this is US management at its finest, right? I'm going to tell you a story. There's numerous stories in the NFL, right? But there's a story about a guy called John Gruden who brought the Tampa Bay Buccaneers their first ever Super Bowl back in the early 2000s, right? And John Gruden, on the first day of training camp, comes in with this giant rock, this big granite slab, and sticks it in the middle of the dressing room. And it's like, you got to pound the rock. You got to pound the rock, which is also an American football term for running the ball. But he was saying, look, this is a huge piece of granite, right? It's ugly, it's horrible, it's so difficult to break. But if you keep chipping away at it, if you keep pounding it, if you keep going and going and going, eventually you're going to carve that into something, or it's going to break and fall apart. And that was the team motto for the year, was just pound the rock, pound the rock. They then had it on like T-shirts throughout the year, all this kind of stuff. Every game they walk in, they see that rock there, that granite rock there. There's ones where American football coaches have taken a game ball. I think it was the Raiders a few years ago. They got hammered, beat down badly. So they took a game ball, they dug up an area of the practice field, put the ball in the ground and re-buried it, put the dirt back over on it. Because it's like, we're burying that one, we're not having it anymore, that doesn't exist to us, it's not even in our eyesight, that loss, that's too much for us, we're burying it, we're done, we're moving on. And Mikel Arteta's looks like he's watched too many of these US American football documentaries, you know, the all or nothing American football docs, the hard knocks that we see every single year, all this kind of stuff. And he's gone, oh, I need some of that. I need some of that. And when it works, you look great. You know, pound the rock's our motto all year. And that's what we did. We were hard as nails and we pounded that rock. And eventually we got through and we won the Super Bowl. And it's awesome. And I guarantee there are so many of those mottos throughout an American football season. There's 31 other teams that don't win the Super Bowl. They're all going to have some crap motto that never sees the light of day unless they win it. But you know that coach is going, why the hell did I do that? Why the hell did I do that? I look like such an idiot now. We've lost 16 games in a 17-game season. Why did I think that run it back was the motto that we needed to have? It's not inspiring. It's stupid. And Arteta's just suffering that same sort of feeling of, as you say, you look a genius if you win the title last year. But instead, you just look a bit overly eccentric. The difference is, with any of these, the success doesn't necessarily get measured on how the outcome of the overall team is, right? The success of all of these should be, does it actually fire people up? If Arsenal players are stood there and they're reacting to the light bulb incident and going, yeah, I get it. Yeah, the light bulb's great, but it doesn't work unless it's all connected. Like, I'm a light bulb and I can be great, but I still need to be connected to everybody else around me. Yeah, that's a great metaphor. And if they're inspired by it, doesn't matter whether you finish third, second, fifth, whatever. If it works to generate the cohesion in the team that you want to get, that's fine. And you'll never know that behind closed doors most of the time. If it doesn't, then you're an idiot. There's a guy called Jameis Winston who's a quarterback. He does a lot of pre-game speeches, and he made this thing about, look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing. And he put his fingers into a W shape and then was trying to eat it. Because he's like, that's all we're doing all day. We're eating W's. As in, we're getting wins. And it's like, and everybody stood around him. No one's getting hyped up by it. Everyone's like, Jameis, what are you just putting your fingers in your mouth like a child? It's kind of gross, dude. And we got a game in like 20 minutes. And I've got to interact with you during this game as well. So if you could wipe them off, that'd be great, to be honest. And that's what it should be measured in. I'm not against it. I get the theatricality of it. I bet there's loads of these sorts of things around the place. I'd rather have a manager who's trying to do that, to inspire, than you get some managers who you look at and think, well, either you're just like Captain Shouty going into a dressing room and you try and rally people by just yelling at them and being abusive, or you get guys that you think go into a dressing room and you just get that kind of meek, mild-mannered. He's not coming out with a I am Spartacus sort of moment, is he, in that dressing room at all? So if it works and if it gets the thing out of the players that they want, I don't mind it. I'm okay with it. But I'm very accustomed to it, Dave. I'm very accustomed to it.
Is it just two that popped into my mind? This is a whole other podcast by itself, Ollie. I know this is a bit different, but Barry Fry once peed on all 4 corner flags. Have you heard this? To get rid of an ancient curse.
Oh, that rings a bell. I don't know the details of it, but yeah.
It's a little bit different now, but I mean, that's obviously you can never get away with that now. But like he did it, you could never get away with admitting it now. But he did that. But also one that's a bit more relevant is Brendan Rodgers when he was at Liverpool, got the whole squad in the room and he gave everyone a piece of paper and he's like, write down the names of 3 players you think will disappoint me this season. And I thought that was a bit like, that's quite edgy in itself, isn't it? Write down 3 names of people you think are going to let me down. And then obviously it's all anonymous and you put it into a hat and he's the only one that gets to look at it. Yeah. And I remember thinking like that's very divisive potentially.
That's kind of ratty.
Very divisive.
Because that starts the conversation once he walks out of the room of, oh, who did you write? Oh, really? Yeah, who did you write? Whereas actually what you want is the whole of your team to put 3 blank lines on those pieces of paper. That's what you're looking for, surely, as a manager.
In fact, maybe that was it. It's a test to see who'll rat on the teammates, or everyone writes Brendan Rodgers. You know, the thing is with Arteta as well. It's like, would you have done that if the camera wasn't there, mate? Mm-hmm. And I don't mean this as a criticism because a lot of people do things for the camera because, you know, it's part of the dance, it's part of the play, how you're seen by the media. But are you really getting a light bulb and talking about Thomas Edison if the camera's not there? I don't know.
Well, it's very, again, it's like a very American thing to do. And not only that, but you're taking a very American kind of hero, if you will. You know, Thomas Edison wasn't British, he was American, right? Why don't you find somebody Spanish or English, considering you're managing the Premier League? It just, and then again, that's why it screams, and I've been sceptical of that Manchester City documentary, the first one that they did of the football teams, at least of All or Nothing, because All or Nothing was a American football series initially, and then it branched out. They did the Test series, they did the series with the All Blacks, they did obviously then started with the Premier League and Manchester City. And I thought it was interesting that Manchester City, who have that, obviously Manchester City FC in the US, kind of then were the first team to broach into the slightly more American style fly on the wall documentary type thing. And I watched some of that and was like, I don't buy some of these speeches. You know, particularly like, do you think Dele Alli knew the cameras were on him when he went on that big long speech? And then Pep was like, no, Dele, that's not what we... Not Dele Alli, who was it? Fabian Delph, sorry. Fabian Delph went on a big
I remember it.
Charge in the dressing room, and then Pep was like, no, Fabian.
Yeah, I don't know. Can I just, something's popped into my head about Thomas Edison, Ollie, one of my favourite stories of stoicism ever, if you don't mind me just branching out slightly. And I just looked it up. Thomas Edison, in 1914, obviously he was a scientist, right? His entire laboratory went on fire in the middle of the night, and he was alerted to this. So everything he'd ever worked for, like, went on fire. And he ran down to the laboratory and like the whole building and everything was just completely up in flames. And imagine like your life's work, everything you've done, nothing's backed up on the internet. It's 1914. Like it's there. Everything is written down. Every scientific discovery, every piece of his brain is there in that laboratory. It's all up in flames. And you know what he did? He was with his son and he said, son, go back home and get your mother because you'll never see a fire like this again in your life. As in that. He couldn't have been like, oh my God, that's my life's work. And instead he said like, go get your mother. You'll never see anything like this again. You'll never see a fire like this again. I thought, wow, like talk about reframing a situation to a positive and absolutely wild. Maybe Mr. Arteta should have told that fucking story rather than your shitty light bulb story.
guys, you see how we're crumbling and burning at the end of this football season? You're never going to see a team crumble and burn like this under pressure again. You're never going to see it. Get your family in.
He could have told that story and then been like, you know how at the end of last season we lost, to Manchester City, but that will never happen again. You'll never see that happen again. Just wrap it up on the Premier League. Oh, let's talk about Ivan Toney briefly. Yeah, I mean, is he going to Saudi Arabia? Is he going to Arsenal? Is he staying at Brentford? If you had to bet now, where do you think he's going, Ollie?
He'll end up at Arsenal. He's a fool if he goes to. He's just a fool if he and like, don't get me wrong, like he's made some poor decisions in his life already, but like you're an absolute fool if you go to Saudi Arabia because
he's a numbers man, isn't he?
Yeah, but
he likes the numbers going up, Ollie.
It's a career crusher. Like you're literally gambling with your career if you go to Saudi Arabia. How many people have we seen go there and come back, or go there and complain and not enjoy it? He is willing to gamble with anything, this man, including his own career at this point. So if he goes to Arsenal, that's like the 2-1 shot. If he goes to Saudi Arabia, he's putting it all on the 100-1 outsider, and it'd be ludicrous because he's got himself into a position now where he's definitely more than just a thought for the England squad and the national team. He's definitely considered a striker as a proper finisher in English football, which is what a number of teams will be crying out for in the midpoint of this Premier League season for sure. If you don't capitalise on that now and take the opportunity at this league, in this level, might never come back again. Jordan Henderson didn't roll back into a Premier League side. He had to go to an Ajax side that was crumbling apart in the Dutch league. So, yeah, it would be insane. Staying at Brentford isn't a bad option either. It's good to be the big fish in the small pond sometimes. It really helps you out because you stand out and you sit above everybody in that small pond, and that helps you get picked to go up to the big pond of the international games.
You take the pens, you take the free kicks, you're the first name on the team sheet. It's also like Brentford stuck with you, man. Like they stuck with you when like you've done great for Brentford, but it's a two-way street as well. Like they kind of had to stick with him, but like they stuck with him. Do you know what I mean? Presumably gave him support. Gambling's an addiction. I get that. I feel more comfortable taking the mick out of Ivan Toney after he did that. He sort of what was it? It was like the BAFTAs or something weird where he like went up and made a joke about himself. I don't know. I can't. I'm butchering this, but yeah, Ivan Toney's prepared to joke about it, so I think it's fair game that other people are. But yeah, I don't know. Brentford stuck with him, so it'd be kind of a shame.
If you had the choice at this point, what would you take? If you were in Ivan Toney's shoes?
Well, the thing for Saudis is obviously it's a money move, right? But the difference is, Ollie, if you or I were given the opportunity to move to Saudi for double what we earn now, triple what we earn now, that is genuinely like life-changing money. That's like generational changing money, as in it will actually change like your life. Whereas Ivan Toney or any Premier League footballer who's been a Premier League footballer for a decade, if you've got a half-decent financial advisor, the next like 10 generations of your family are sorted financially in the sense that like you could buy 10 massive houses and like write it into your will that they can only be. Do you know what I mean? There's ways of preserving it, or buy gold and Bitcoin and like assets and property all around the world. And like bar some kind of massive disaster, all future generations of your family will be taken care of. So the money. So then moving to Saudi, like that is where the word greed kicks in for me. Like you can stay in the Premier League and earn money that will give you everything you could ever want. Like, do you need a private jet? Like that's just greed, right? That earning more money is great and everyone wants to do it, but that's great. So if I'm Ivan Toney, I go to Brentford and I just say I want to go to Arsenal. I do not want to be at this football club. I know it's savage on Brentford, but he's a 27-year-old or 28 years old. It's absolute peak. The opportunity to go to Arsenal, be in a title race and win trophies under Mikel, the light bulb Arteta is just is a huge opportunity.
Here's an interesting question for you about him then. Do you think there's a fear? Because let's face it, Ivan Toney's rise has been pretty prolific over the last few years, right? I mean, Brentford getting into the Premier League has massively changed his life as he did in helping them get up to the Premier League. Is it easier to just take the money and go to Saudi rather than going then to a big club? I mean, Jamie Vardy never left Leicester, right? I mean, he could have done if he wanted to. I'm sure there were opportunities that teams would have taken Jamie Vardy. And I'm not saying Jamie Vardy was scared either. I mean, what he did at Leicester, and Leicester maintained like great football for about 3 years, including that obviously that Premier League title winning season before they went down and have come back up again.
He's still doing it, Leicester, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, it was They were really good in that second half against Tottenham, by the way. Tottenham were freaking so Tottenham. Great in the first half. Second half, miserable to watch. But
yeah.
I do wonder if for a player who's come up through the leagues and you get to that point, you're suddenly looking at more than you could have ever arguably dreamed of maybe 4 years ago. Like, there's that desire there, obviously, which is why you keep doing it and you keep going out because you've got that hope you'll one day get there. But suddenly you get there and you've got your dream right in front of you. It's a really intimidating moment, I think, for some people to have. And if you go to Arsenal and flop, you're suddenly scared of being the Arsenal player that flopped and didn't make it for whatever reason. Look at Odegaard, you know. He went to Real Madrid, was considered the next great wunderkid, and then nothing happened for him. And unfortunately for him, had to rebuild his stock, so to speak. And now he's considered a wonderful midfielder in the Premier League at Arsenal. But it took a long time to rebuild that. And it's a weird thing when somebody's offering you an easy way out where you won't even have to think in Saudi Arabia. Everything will be sorted for you. You'll have more money than you can ever imagine, more money than you get in the Premier League, and there's no pressure. No one's really watching Ivan Toney in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it's a great point, Ollie. And I think it's even scarier because Arsenal have an unbelievably complete, brilliant squad that would have won a couple of Premier Leagues already if it weren't for Manchester City. So it's even scarier because if Arsenal buy Ivan Toney, they're saying we're buying Toney to win the league. Like, this is the final piece of the puzzle. Here's our number 9. He's not going to be working the flanks. He's not going to be dropping in. He's our number 9. He's going to score our goals. He's going to start every game. He's the man that's going to win us the league. So, and if they don't do that, you know, if City win it again, and Toney, you know, even if Toney does well, like, you would say, well, you know, they bought him and it didn't work out. So it's kind of like Harry Kane going to Bayern in some. It's not, but like in some ways, you know, scored loads of goals, but it's not like Harry Kane won Bayern the title. So. Yeah, it's scary, but it's a proper now or never move from, I think. Because if he stays at Brentford, and again, like, you know, he might feel like he owes Brentford something, I don't know, or they don't feel like they got the right price for him. But if he stays at Brentford, all of a sudden he's 29, 31, and Arsenal aren't going to come in for him because Arsenal are going to go and buy Osimhen or whoever. So, yeah, I'm amazed Osimhen hasn't moved to the Premier League by now, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we'll barely get to see him as well, which is a shame.
Yeah, so what's going on with that? So basically, the Serie A, I mean, I work for Serie A indirectly. I don't know whether this is a good forum for me to talk about it, but yeah, like they messed up the right situation. What's going on, Ollie?
So I think it's a case of the money they wanted, and this is all just rumour and hearsay. I have no objectivity with how the dealings have gone between TNT and Serie A or anything like that. But TNT were showing every single
and not just
game.
TNT, Ollie. Sorry, this is like Serie A rights. Like in other countries, they've messed it up as well, right?
Yeah, it's all a bit kaput of where it's actually showing it in a number of places, but. Yeah, so TNT was showing every single game, and then this year they're showing 2 games only a weekend because, from the sounds of it, it seems too expensive. Like, Serie A asking for too much money in the same way the French, there was very clear signs that the French Ligue 1 was asking for way too much money, and they've got even less to show for it, particularly with no Mbappe at Paris Saint-Germain. They were asking for $1 billion from their local broadcasters in an article I read in the summer. And even the local broadcasters in France were like, you're not worth it. We still get bigger audiences for most of the Premier League games than we do for 90% of the French games, and we're in France, so why would we pay that amount of money? So now the remainder of the Serie A football is available live on the One Football app that I've never heard of until somebody mentioned that you were able to stream it there. Don't know how that's available and whether they've bought any rights. There are rumours flying around that DAZN might pick up some Serie A games, but all I do know is that there's only 2 games at the moment on, I suppose, inverted commas, normal television, which is on TNT, and it's probably going to be every Sunday night and some other time, but that's dependent on when the fixtures get released, which is a shame because it's a great league, and it's kind of a great league across the board.
Great league. It's a fucking great league.
You can have a Sassuolo against Lecce that might not bring some people in, but the ones that it does, you end up with like a 4-3, and they're not all like that, obviously. And every Fiorentina game isn't going to be as easy on the eye as that City is, but it produces so many good encounters every single weekend, particularly from sides that you don't necessarily expect to. There was a couple of seasons ago when Hellas Verona, for the first 4 or 5 months of the season, were the best thing to watch. And it was ridiculous. They played such good attacking football. So
I remember it.
So the story of Bologna last year, great to watch. Tactically so organised, really good. Ran so many of the big clubs right to the end. End up just finishing in the top 4, deserve a Champions League spot. So yeah, it's It's a real shame because there are some great stars in that league that you won't get to see as often. Victor Osimhen is one of them. How he's not made a move to the Premier League as a proper finisher is beyond me.
He's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. I mean, he could play for absolutely anyone. He's absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, but this, you criticize the Premier League all you want, Ollie, but the Premier League knows how to sell a product. They know how to sell a product, and other leagues are still, trailing in their wake. And Serie A, as you and I know, like we've watched, cover the league, and it's a great league. There's some great stories, there's some great stadiums, there's the weight of history, some big names, and they just can't package it well enough.
That's the thing about all of this. So the funny thing about streaming is, and again, I'm going to be careful with what I say because I've worked with DAZN and people like that, and to their credit, DAZN have got the National League this year. They're doing games on site. They're taking camera crews out there. They're taking presenter, co-commentator, etc. They are trying to keep what has been built around the National League going, which is fair enough. But the one thing that is difficult for some of these streaming platforms is that Premier League game finishes on Sunday, right? 5 o'clock? 6 o'clock? And most people who watch Premier League football on Sky will have a remote and they will flick through what's on as I go through. Bit of golf, bit of tennis. They'll get to the TNT games and they'll set channels and they'll go, Inter against Fiorentina. All right, stick this on for 5 minutes. It's highly unlikely if after that flicking through point, if there isn't a game that takes your fancy there, that somebody goes, I tell you what, let's switch on the app. And then they have to go through, because it's 5 more steps of, all right, well, we'll get the other remote, we'll go onto the TV, load up the app, scroll through the app looking for a potential game, and then watch it. Whereas particularly people that have families, that doesn't become an option. It becomes the football's over, family time if they want to watch the TV, etc. Like that. That's just the way it goes because you're adding more steps to get to that next game of football. And it was something that Discovery Plus were very good at in terms of during the Olympics. They said, look, this is finishing, but right now over here, this is happening or this is happening. Just trying to guide you through to the next one. And if you put too many steps in the way, that's when you see less of viewership because what people want is just click, 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 click. Oh, okay, there. If you go click, search.
Mate, it's the same. Any sign up, any subscribe, any add my email in, and I'm gone. Do you know what I mean? Like, and same as many people, it's like the attention span's so short. Let's wrap this up, Mr. Wilson. By not going to do. I don't like the whole Premier League prediction because it's just a lottery. But who's going to win the league?
City. It just will be like. It's a shame to say it, but I just don't see what you can do to really compete with that. I hope somebody pushes them like Arsenal did last year. I don't think it'll be Chelsea. I don't think Tottenham will have a chance. I don't think it'll be United. Wasn't exactly a polished performance against Fulham, but it's the first day of the season. So there's no point making any sort of judgment on any of these teams until you get to 7-8 games into this campaign.
The only caveat I'd say is I think City win the league, unless they get docked points, and then obviously then everything's available. I mean, it's absolutely farcical to me. Listen. You are innocent until proven guilty. That is the bedrock of the judicial system in this country and amongst most of the West. You are an innocent man. You're an innocent corporation. You're an innocent business unless you are found guilty. So Manchester City are innocent. But lads, there's 115 charges. It's been going on for years. Like, what is it? Are they innocent? If they are innocent, great. Let them play. Let's forget all about this. Let's say Pep Guardiola is the greatest Premier League manager of all time. But if they're not innocent, you've got to charge them. Like, either way, this can't, in Starmer's Britain, come on, let's get people in the courts now and see what's going on. Like, are they innocent? Are they guilty? I don't know. It's an odd one.